All right, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. So, inshallah, today we're going to be doing uh, our tafsir for Surah Al-An'am. And in Surah Al-An'am, certainly we've got a number of different things to actually talk about, so let's do it. Yesterday we did cover this piece of ayah. ولو أننا نزلنا إليهم الملائكة وكلمهم الموتى وحشرنا كل شيء قبلا ما كانوا ليؤمنوا إلا أن يشاء الله ولكن أكثرهم يجهلون. And we talked about the context of this, and we said that it is basically telling the Prophet ﷺ when the disbelievers had asked for a miracle, they weren't asking for a miracle per se, but they were more procrastinating. They were more trying to really mock the Prophet ﷺ's miracles of the Quran. They were trying to basically put in different it's more of ta'jizi, not to mean that it is something that is something that is with not within the power of the Prophet ﷺ as a prophet or as someone that is supported by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is basically because they were being arrogant. And we then went in details what makes a person's heart, even if they are to see a miracle, what makes their heart not see the miracle? What makes their eyes so closed, or al-ama, so close to recognize the magnificence and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in what he was basically displaying for them in terms of things to let them recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power, let them recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's authority, let them recognize and have that khushu', etc. And we went in some details and we basically talked about that piece of it. And we said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was giving us those indications that why, even if they were to see a miracle, that they would still not believe. And we said because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us that نَذَرُهُمْ فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ, that they would be deep in their transgression, and ya'mahun, and that would bring about blindness. When a person transgresses the limit in perhaps maybe, let's say, in sin, okay, in visual sin, then if they're transgressing the limits in visual sin, they would not be capable of seeing other signs around them. If they transgress the limits in probably maybe dhulm, in abusing others, then they would not have the mercy and the empathy to recognize any empathy for anything, not just for human beings, but even for animals or even for other things. They had lost their emotions because they had basically transgressed the limits there. If they transgressed the limits in hearing, just keep this one in mind, because the Salihin used to say, for example, with music, okay, they used to say you cannot have the love for Quran and the love for music combined in one's heart. And this is extremely important to keep in mind. So when we're speaking about if a person transgresses the limits in what they see, they're looking at haram, then they're not going to be capable of seeing the good and the miracles that surround them. They're not going to be capable of seeing them there. If they had transgressed the limits with their emotions, for example, they loved somebody in haram, for example, they put themselves in that situation to love, let's say, a girl loving a boy and a boy loving a girl, etc. They put themselves in this relationship, then there's no way that their heart is going to taste the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the love for the Prophet or the love for the Quran, because they put themselves in this situation where they had replaced the love. There aren't loves of haram love or haram seeing or haram hearing. It cannot dissolve within your qalb, within your mind, within your body. It doesn't dissolve, and that's the same thing. When you look at, for example, the love for music, if you are in love for music, there's no way that your heart is going to be in love for Quran. There's no way. If you're in love with a relationship, the path or the lifestyle of haram, there's no way that you are in love with the lifestyle or appealed, or you've got this. You were appealed by, let's say, the culture of the disbelievers and their way of living, etc. At the same time, claim to be a mu'min. There's no way, because that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ لو يطيعكم في كثير من الأمر لعنتم ولكن الله حبب إليكم الإيمان زينه في قلوبكم كره إليكم الكفر والفسوق والعصيان. I want you to look at this one. He used the word حبب and used the word كره. What does that mean? The word حبب means it was made lovable to you. And at the same time, حبب what? Al-Iman. And he didn't just make faith beautiful and lovable to you. What does it mean, lovable to you? You just blend with it, that you have deep and strong emotional feelings to this Iman lifestyle. You just enjoy. What is hub? What is love? Love is to have strong feelings towards someone or something that you want to have, let's say, be in close proximity. You want to be in close relations with whatever you love, whether it's your husband, it's your children, it's your parents. You want to feel that you are next to them. It just gives you a sense of security. It gives you a sense of belonging. It gives you a sense of warmth. It gives you a sense of feeling that there's affection. This is love. When they're gone, that's when you start longing for them, and you start feeling that I need to get closer and closer. And when he says حبب إليكم الإيمان زينه في قلوبكم, no, they're not just wanting to be mu'mineen. حبب إليكم الإيمان, it's like it's so dear to you that you enjoy being around those that pray. You enjoy being in prayer. You enjoy being in piety. You love that lifestyle, that you just feel you cannot separate yourself from it. Remember, love, you don't want to separate away from your lover. But this relationship, Iman, is not a human being, but it's like it's a personal relationship between you and Iman, that you love it. It has become as if it's a personal relationship between you and Iman, and that it's a personal relationship. You don't want to be away from Iman. You want to stay close to Iman. You want to always feel within the perimeter and within Iman, because you feel warmth, you feel security, you feel affection, you feel a strong emotional relationship with Iman. Because, when you say habbaba, I can understand loving food, I can understand loving daughter, son, husband, mother, father, I can understand loving those. But how do you love faith? You live the faith, but not love it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used loving faith because it moved from a relationship of engagement to a relationship that became a personal relationship. It's a personal relationship with Iman, that they feel that security within Iman. They feel that relationship, that this is where I belong. Iman makes me feel my identity. زينه في قلوبكم. It was beautified. You would usually use zina to mean beautification, to mean appearance, to mean something is right there that makes you feel that yes, it's covering something else, but it's zina to, yeah, I'm here, just beautifying it. What is zina? زينه في قلوبكم. زينه في قلوبكم actually means that Iman is there because you already had a personal relationship with it. But zayyanahu, meaning that faith itself became your place of adorance, your place of beautification, that what you apply to make yourself appear and to make yourself look good, you don't use other than faith. What makes you more beautiful? Your wudu. What makes you appear appealing? It's your faith. You're not doing it for riya, but you're doing it because you love it. That's what makes you enjoy the relationship with a salihah girl, a mu'min. Why? Because you love the faith that resides within them. You love the faith that resides within them, and that's what that zina looks like. And at the same time, in your heart, what makes you beautiful is the iman that resides within you. What makes you different than anyone else is al-iman. What makes you love iman is habbaba ilaykum al-iman. And then at the same time, كره إليكم الكفر والفسوق والعصيان, made it al-kufr, disbelief, al-fusuq. Al-fusuq is basically any major sin, and al-asyan is any minor sin, that they would hate it. They don't enjoy, they don't have this relationship with all those kinds of, let's say, areas that are distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so when you look at that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting us know that their tughyan and their lifestyle transgressing the limits basically let them be blinded, and their jahl, the opposite of rushd, basically is what led them to lose the relationship with keeping their eyes, love seeing what's khair, and then when they saw what's khair, they didn't even see it. And when they heard what's good, they didn't even hear it. And when they had the relationship, they had the opportunity to be surrounded with salihin, they thought it was boring. Why did they think that relationship and hearing the relationship and those friendships of what salihin would do, why did they think of it as boring? Because their heart, their ears were so used to sin, because sin has a taste, sin has a sound, sin has an appearance, sin has a vibe. There's a vibe of sin, and there's a vibe of khair, of salah. You would sense it. It doesn't take much. That takes me to Uthman bin Affan. A man comes, and then Uthman bin Affan just looks into his eyes and he says, I can see zina in your eyes. That man was shaken. He said, what? There's wahi after the Prophet ﷺ? And he said, no, but a believer sees in the eyes of Allah. In other words, when a person goes strong in their faith, they start seeing what others are not saying, and they start measuring. They start being capable of measuring faith and seeing it. They may not know, but they just feel that on the inside, they feel a certain sensation, something's not right about that person. I'm not saying using this as a way indefinitely describing that. I'm not saying that using that sensation as a way to describe that person and probably get closer far from that person. Just having a sensation or a gut feeling is not an evidence to prove someone being good or wrong, or being bad or good, or etc. We're not going to use that sensation, but For Salihin, it's a different story. That's why you had al-Khadr, for example, with Prophet Musa alayhi salam. What did he have? He had that strong faith that even Prophet Musa alayhi salam went to learn from his wisdom that was developed with a different kind of spiritual relationship that he had. Even Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he went to him to learn. And then, إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. You're not going to be patient enough to learn why this is done. And then he continued and was like, why did you do that? That was so wrong. And then just wait. And then إِنَّكَ قَالَ فَلَا تَسْأَلْنِي عَنْ شَيْءٍ حَتَّى أُحْدِثَ لَكَ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا. Until I would tell you. Just wait. What did he have that even the Prophet didn't have? Okay, and that's one thing that you need to keep in mind, that faith itself develops ilm. Why? Because ilm is the relationship and the deep relationship that you would develop with the things around you, whether it's a sensation, or whether it's a visual thing, or whether it's hearing, or whether it's all these develop relationships. These relationships go farther than a materialistic relationship because you see what is beyond the surface. And that's part of an iman. It gives you beyond the surface relationship. It gives you beyond the surface knowledge about the things that surround you. And let's continue right there. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ يَجَهَلُونَ, they would be so ignorant. Why? Because the opposite of al-jahl can be al-rushd, and the opposite of al-jahl can be al-ilm. The opposite of al-jahl can be al-ilm and can be al-rushd. All right? So did they not have their ilm? Yes, their senses were so numb that even if they were to see the angels, they were to see the dead talking to them, they killed their senses, their seeing, their hearing, their relationship with the world around them, that it was so numb that even if they were to see other miracles, they weren't going to come back to faith. Why? Because through their sins, they had killed their senses. Senses are basically the tools that we use to learn about the world. How do you learn about the world? The first tools that you would learn about are basically the senses. You would learn about the five senses in order to help you learn the main resources to letting you know about the world: sensation, temperature, perhaps maybe texture, etc. All of that. That's basically the tool to help you learn about the changes and about the materialistic things that are around you. And from there, we would also learn that those of course, al-kuffar, they basically had killed their senses and they were not capable of developing ilm. So they were يجهلون. وكذلك جعلنا لكل نبي عدوا شياطين الإنس والجن يوحي بعضهم إلى بعض زخرف القول غرورا. Maybe I should go back to this one. So what revives our senses is the question. What revives and what activates our senses to seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's magnificence, to having these relationships? That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the borders. They gave us the borders of wajib, haram, makruh, etc. These borders are to help protect your senses, are to help protect you to stay vigilant and to stay basically alert and to stay awake in order to develop these relationships of حبب إليكم الإيمان. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, had made alcohol and drugs haram. Why? Because they kill the sense that keeps you awake in recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make, for example, zina haram? Yes, certainly when we speak about the alternative marriage, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting you know that that's an amount that is to keep you basically within the limit that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created within you as within that instinct. But when it comes to zina, the second that you get out of that parameter of halal, you're going to start closing up on your mind. You're going to start contaminating your vision, your heart, your mind, your relationship with the world around you. We're talking about the environment as well. Environment itself develops a relationship with your heart. And that's why when you look at the ayah, يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. There's a relationship. Stay away from najasa. ثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. Your clothes, they have to be clean. Not only your clothes, but we're talking about your environment. وَالرُّجْزَ فَهْجُرْ. الرُّجْز, entirely contaminants. Stay away from those. Why? Because they have a direct relationship with altering your vision, your ilm, your knowledge about the world. We're not talking about just physical contaminants of najasa, for example, but no, we're speaking about the other contaminants, behavioral as well. They will affect your capacity, your potential to recognizing the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala around you, to recognizing justice from injustice, to recognizing good from bad, to recognizing even further a person taqwa or not. And that's why you would see nifaq, hypocrisy. You may think that, yes, this person, speaking of good and speaking of khair, but then you don't know what really is concealed on the inside. A person's commitment is going to strengthen their senses of recognizing in what they would see as khair and what they would say is wrong, and how they would process in interpreting whether politics, in interpreting behaviors, and interpreting thoughts, and interpreting all these things. Khair is basically the tool, and Iman is the tool to strengthen your ilm. To strengthen your ilm is basically based on your commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hudud, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's borders, principles. Okay. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا. Every single prophet will have an enemy. You can't be just friends with anyone. And that's why the people that are maturely, let's say, they have mature intelligence in their maturity. Who are those? Those are the people that recognize who they're supposed to surround themselves with and who they're supposed to stay away from. How do you know if your son or your daughter are mature or they have the intelligence to recognize and be mature? It's when they recognize who they're supposed to be friends with. Remember, if you are friends with, let's say, 5 salihin, you're expected to be the 6th. If you're friends with 5 fasiqin, you're going to be the 6th. If you are friends with 5 rich people, you're going to become rich. If you are friends with 5 smart people, you're going to be amongst the 6 smart people. When you surround yourself with, let's say, A students, your chances of becoming an A student this is scientifically proven. Your chances of being an A student and becoming an A student increases by 30%. Just by being around these A students, you're increasing your chance of becoming an A student. Therefore, by surrounding yourself with students that are low grade, guess what? You're going to get dragged and you're going to see a regression in your grades as well. You decide how to increase and decrease by a certain vibe. Keep that in mind. By you putting yourself within a certain environment, you're going to not only affect your grades, but you're also going to affect your iman as well. So when you look at every single prophet had a'da, had enemies, because without you recognizing who you belong with and who you surround yourself with and who you are an enemy to, meaning who you separate yourself from, if you don't recognize that, then you don't recognize your identity. Your identity, your relationship with your aqidah, that's going to determine your identity and your relationship with how and who is within your border, who is outside of that border, and you develop your own identity. You can't have an identity. You cannot have an identity unless you have a margin. If you don't have borders, then you don't have an identity. In other words, it's you recognizing who you are and who you are not. If you are not a failure, then don't be amongst the failures. If you are not a fasiq, then don't surround the fasiqs. If you are not jahil, then don't be around jahil. If you are a salih, you want to be a salih person? I'm not a salih. That's why Shafi'i used to say, I'm not part of the salihin, but I will surround myself with the salihin, because the chances of me becoming a salih by surrounding myself with them increases. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless the groups of salihin. And that's why the poem says, what is the هم القوم لا يشقى بهم جليسهم. They're the people that just by surrounding yourself with them, لا يشقى, you will not regress, you will not go into sorrow, you will not be disappointed. لا يشقى بهم جليسهم. Just by sitting around these people, even if you are really not like them, just by sitting around them, you're increasing your chances of being successful. They're memorizing Quran, you're not doing the great job as them. Hey, just sit with them and just try to do your best, even if you're not at their level. But just by surrounding yourself with them, that's enough to increase your chance. 1, you'll get blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the malaika. 2, you will also be considered that, yes, there's a group right there, they're trying to memorize Quran. That was not doing a good job, but he's trying to at least surround himself with them. He's trying to get there. Yeah, he's watching them. Then you're increasing your chance of becoming part of them. لا يشقى بهم جليسهم. Just by surrounding yourself with them, you're guaranteeing yourself, inshallah, that you would not be cursed, you would not be amongst those that would be in regression. You increase your chance of being included in the blessing, increase your chance of being included in Jannah, increase your chance of being loved by the Salihin. And guess what? there's a part in our brain that we mirror, we replicate the things that surround us. We replicate and mirror the things that surround us. So what does that mean? Without us realizing, you mirror and you start imitating the people that surround you. This is real. You, without you realizing, even your movements, they would, even your movements, they start becoming like the movements of your friends. You start talking like them. You start moving your head like them. You start looking at things the way they would look at things. Your language becomes like them. And when you talk about that, it just tells you language. That's why I jumped here to say, well, عدوا شياطين الإنس والجن. They would have these enemies of شياطين الإنس والجن. Wait a minute. So it's شياطين الإنس والجن. Let's go to this one. Let's look into this one. When you say كذلك جعلنا, let's see القرطبي and what he says. كذلك جعلنا لكل نبي. He said يعزي نبيه ويسليه. What is يعزي نبيه ويسليه? Meaning he was comforting him to let him know. Would you comfort somebody by telling him that every single prophet had an enemy? How is that supposed to be bringing in comfort? It's supposed to be bringing in comfort to letting you know that, you don't like people hating you. None of us want to be hated by anybody. We wish that everybody would just embrace us and everybody just loves us, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us that no, part of being a noble person is to be an enemy to evil. And that's when the evil people are going to see you ardent on whatever they are doing, and they're going to see you as their target. Just keep that one in mind. In other words, if you want to know your place and your position in this whole field of, let's say, the battle between al-haq and al-batil, if you are considered as the number one wanted for a country like Israel, if you're their number one wanted, congratulations. This is a sign you are the number one preferred by Allah. This is real. That you're the number one preferred by Allah. This is a sign. Why? Because when the most evil people take you as the number one target, that you're the strongest of their enemy, that actually tells you that you are the most and the strongest to actually fight against their cause. Congratulations. Congratulations. Just keep that one in mind. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا شَيَاطِينَ الْإِنسِ وَالْجِنِّ, just know, every single prophet, those prophets that were before you, they had those enemies of jinn and ins stand against them, try to demolish every single effort, every single potential that they had tried to put in and invest in bringing people into light. There were those enemies that worked against all their efforts. Just keep that one in mind. And he said, يُوحِي بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ زُخْرُفَ الْقَوْلِ غُرُورًا. How did they act? He said, well, there were shayateen al-ins wal-jinn that gave these inspirations. Most of these inspirations, it would be given as a narrative. زُخْرُفَ الْقَوْلِ. زخرف القول, in our modern times, we use the word narrative. But the Quran didn't use the word narrative, but I'm using, let's say, a word that today in our modern times, they use the word narrative for it, but the Quran used the word زخرف القول. What does it literally mean? Zukhruf is basically when you beautify something. Zukhruf is when you beautify something. You're beautifying your house. I don't know, you're putting up probably flowers, maybe, I don't know, pictures, or probably some design. That's zukhruf. You're beautifying, probably putting makeup and, I don't know, eyelashes, or probably lipstick, or whatever it is, all that you're trying to beautify yourself. That's zukhruf. Zukhruf. Zakhrafa is usually put on something that is not appealing, not beautiful, ugly. That's why makeup, it is to make up a missing component of that person's beauty. The people that use makeup the most are the most people that lack confidence in their appearance. So they need to make up. They're trying to make up what they feel is missing about them. You would say, oh, I can't go out without my makeup. It's like, oh, okay, you can't go out without your makeup because you lack confidence in your appearance. Okay, now, زخرف القول. Al-qawl means words. So what are they doing? They're beautifying the words. In other words, they're creating a certain rhetoric. What does that remind me of? That reminds me of the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna min al-bayani la sihra. That part of al-bayan, that part of eloquence has magic in it. What is magic? Magic is when certain words may have a manipulation, a way to deceive the listener. It may seem like it's so eloquent, it's so beautiful, but then you need to go deep to realize that what is being said is nothing but a narrative, is nothing but a way to manipulate and make it appear as if it is appealing. But here's the question. When you look at aduwan and ghurura, you could see both of them have tanween fath. Okay? So is it aduwan to make it ghurura? Is the enemy coming with that ghurur? Yes, it is. Is the zukhruf al-qawl coming with that ghurur? Wait a minute, so what is ghurur anyways? Al-ghurur is arrogance. What is arrogance? Arrogance, or al-ghurur, is when you exaggerate a certain feeling of pride and that they have something to give, when in reality, they have nothing to give. And keep that one in mind. They would think that they have something to give. And be careful, because in our modern times, there's a lot more ghurur and gharur than ever before in history. We can give PhDs to create a social status. We can give names of Sheikh, Sheikha, and probably CEO, or probably the head of something, and what it may contain is really nothing but a social status, and that's what many CVs are about. It's about exploded experiences, exploded positions to give a certain social status, to somehow make it appear that this person is qualified, whether for a position, or whether for a position in whether a job or employment, or whether a position in people's hearts, or whether a position social status, or whether a qualification, etc. When in reality, this person might be nothing but an exploded ghurur. But the truth of the matter, you can have somebody that probably didn't even get all these exploded CVs and exploded endurances and exploded, not endurances, but endorsements. Okay. They don't have these exploded endorsements, but they were endorsed by Allah. Keep that in mind. What you're seeking is an endorsement from Allah, not an endorsement from institutions or endorsement from people that don't really matter, like the followers and the subscriptions. So what, this person has 25 million followers on TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is. The truth of the matter, this is nothing but ghurur. It's empty. It's empty. It doesn't really contain anything. It's ghurur. Just like zukhruf al-qawli ghurura, there's also another type of ghurur, which is a type of ghurur when people will think that, yeah, this person is basically a person that is famous, a person, and they're probably empty of any value, empty of anything that is worthy. And in our day and age, we're living a life of ghurur, a life of ghurur, manipulation and emptiness. It's blown up. It's blown up followers, when these followers are following nothing but someone that is being stupid and silly, literally. Acting stupid and doing these weird behaviors and thinking that, yeah, he's got 25 million followers and he basically became a millionaire just by acting stupid. This is real. This is real. Just by acting stupid, this person became a millionaire. The day and age that we're living in, the stupider you are, the more successful, ironically. The stupider you are, the more successful. That's the life that we're living in. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was letting us know that you have to be alert and be careful from zukhruf al-qawl, and be careful from the ghurur, the personal sensation that somebody wants to give you. What comes with ghurur? What comes with ghurur is that this person has a certain psychology. What is their psychology? This person is feeling that they are of worth. Net worth, social worth, political worth, whatever it is. They feel that they are of worth. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting us know, don't get deceived, not by the rhetoric that they are saying or by the position that they had managed to manipulate the masses into. Be careful from that. Be careful from getting manipulated in this position or this rhetoric that they would be using. And وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ مَا فَعَلُوا. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ مَا فَعَلُوا. If your Lord Almighty would have wanted, then he would basically taken away their free will, but the Lord Almighty had basically, but the Lord Almighty had ordained and decreed that there would be a time lapse that they would be given. And the Lord Almighty is not an impulsive Lord. He had ordained that there would be Yawm al-Qiyamah. They would be given the time until Yawm al-Qiyamah, and they would be given the chances, the opportunity to repent, and that's basically their time right there. Okay, let's see. So when the description shayateen al-insi wal-jinn, let's look into shayateen al-insi wal-jinn. So when you say shayateen al-insi wal-jinn, is that, now here they use badal min adu, but this is a terminology that is used in Arabic grammar, but it's also something that has a meaning. So if you were to say shayateen al-insi wal-jinn, are they the ones that are enemies, or is this a description? Okay, either way, whether you call this as a first description or whether shayateen al-ins wal jinn, that they are, if you basically are distant away, whether they're human or jinn, and you're distant away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that means you're going to be the enemy. Or they are, let's say it this way. Allah, that would be so scary to say you. That means they are the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so when there is another qira'ah, shayateen al-jinni wal-ins, not shayateen al-insi wal-jinn. At the end, the letter waw, the letter wa right there, basically means an addition and not necessarily an order. At the end, both can be there. Okay, يوحي بعضهم إلى بعض زخرف القول غرورا. What's another word for yuhi? Yuhi can mean, remember, the mu'mineen, they would also get a different wahi. So can the malaika actually give us wahi? Can the malaika actually give us wahi? Just like shayateen are giving us wahi? Yes, they can. Yes, they can. But in order to get this type of wahi from the angels, okay, from the angels, you would have to develop, remember, just like when we said a personal relationship with the salihin, there's also a personal relationship with the malaika. And these people had a personal relationship with the shayateen. Keep that in mind. They had a personal relationship with the shayateen. Shaitan al-jinn or shaitan al-ins. This person is an evil person. Once you relate with this person, you have this person's my friend. How could you be friends with this kind of person? How can you be friends with this? That once you have a relationship and a personal relationship with a shaitan, whether ins or jinn, what that is telling you is that you're starting to develop sentiments to embrace the lifestyle of that person. And this is extremely important. Keep that in mind when we're speaking about a personal relationship. A personal relationship goes beyond just acquaintance. A personal relationship, it will affect you mentally, it will affect you spiritually, it will affect you physically without you realizing. The people that you surround yourself with, they will mirror you and you will mirror them. So you have to be extremely vigilant, aware of who you are surrounding yourself with. And this is why when you talk about shayateen making what? Waswas. Shayateen making waswas? Yes, shayateen making waswas. So how do they make that waswas? I want to remember that communication, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that communication is not just through words. That we can communicate even human to human, human to animal, human to the things around us in ways that are actually farther than just words. That's what this ayah is basically also saying. Yes, zukhruf al-qawl is one thing, but there's also a cert other than that. There's a wahi other than that. Remember, when we see our relationship, you can see, even with animals, if you are sad, your animal senses that you are sad and they start coming and rubbing against you to give you an emotional sensation, an emotional, at least an emotional comfort. We had seen that. For those that lived on ranches, and we would know that. We would see dogs, cats, horses, cows. At least cows are probably the most numb, but horses, dogs, horses and dogs are probably the most ones that, being have lived on a ranch before. Horses and dogs are probably the most to be aware in recognizing the emotions of the people around them. Cats, I don't think they're as much as my son was asking me about cats. I don't think they are the same as dogs, not even close. And horses, not even close. Horses, they recognize, and they will horses are extremely intelligent. Horses are extremely intelligent. Goats and sheep are extremely stupid. Goats, they're aware of what's happening. They're aware. Okay, enough about animals right there. But when we're speaking about human beings, okay, you could say that there is another ihab. There's a certain sensation. There's a certain communication, tool of communication that some may learn. So they will tell you, hey, if a person does these changes, there's a high chance that they're manipulating, they're lying, they're this, or they're probably honest, they're probably, certain behavioral skills that, they in Al-Arab used to call it farasa. They used to call it farasa. What is al-farasa? Al-farasa is to look beyond the surface and to see through the behavior and through the certain signs on that person, and to anticipate what this person's future might look like, or what they're up to, or what their current situation, their present relationship is like. This is called farasa. Al-Arab used to love al-farasa. In fact, even the Prophet ﷺ had praised that Sahabi that through farasa, or actually he wasn't a Sahabi, he actually went into their house, but anyhow, praised that farasa that he had in knowing that the feet of Zayd ibn Thabit looked exactly like the feet of or Osama ibn Zayd, sorry, Osama ibn Zayd, not Zayd ibn Thabit, but Osama ibn Zayd were like the feet of Zayd ibn Haritha. He praised that. It's like, how he managed to see the relationship, between all of that in even appearance or behavior, etc. Okay. Now, having that being said, the Prophet ﷺ, like I said, praised this farasa. And in fact, the scholars of fiqh, they debated whether farasa can be used as a method in a way to probably study and use that as a study in a way to prove a crime or not. In other words, can we use, for example, DNA studies and DNA tests to prove the paternity of a child or not? That's one example. Can we use that? That's that place of differences of opinions. All right, let's continue right there. So just to let us know that communication can actually go farther than words. In other words, you're surrounding yourself with salihin, then know that there's a spiritual communication that's going to be talking to your ruh, your mind. There's a mental communication that's going to talk to your mind without you realizing it. Shayateen, they will talk to your mind, they will talk to your ruh, they will affect you without you realizing it. It's not just the words. Don't just analyze the words, but there's a lot that's happening without you realizing, and it's communicating with your brain, communicating with your heart, communicating with your ruh. Same thing with the salihin. the malaika will also be the one. And of course, just like الشياطين would توحي إلى أوليائهم, even the malaika would give الوحي for المؤمنين. Would give الوحي for المؤمنين. What kind of, so is the malaika like going to come to me and actually say, you know, something like comforting me and etc.? Well, yes, you may not hear it in words, but they will give you the inspiration to feel it. They will give you the inspiration to feel it. And you will get this inspiration to feel the words of comfort, to feel the words of support. And this is extremely important, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting us know that malaika, just like a shayateen, malaika, just like a shayateen, would also give some form of ilham. Give us some form of ilham, give us some form of support. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually said, نزل به الروح الأمين على قلبك لتكون من المنذرين. على قلبك, as a different relationship. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أوحينا إلى موسى. Did the malaika actually talk to Musa? Malaika didn't talk to Musa, but gave her a certain inspiration. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically let us know that when we speak about that wahi, all right, keep that one in mind, that wahi is farther than just wahi in terms of information, but some of it is wahi fitri. أوحى ربك إلى النحل. There's some information that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even with, when it comes to, for example, when it comes to giving wahi, even for information, for certain information to just give me a second. Even when it comes to giving the wahi some form of support, just like the support when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given Sayyida Maryam, إذ قالت الملائكة يا مريم إن الله يبشرك بكلمة منه. And Allah, إذ أوحيت إلى الحواريين أن آمنوا بي وبرسولي. Did he actually give that wahi to actually mean that this wahi is a malaika literally coming? No. It's a communication that they did not necessarily physically see, but it's a communication that goes beyond words, and it's affecting them spiritually, it's affecting them mentally. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّهُ كَانَ فِي مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ مُحَدَّثُونَ مُلْهَمُونَ, that is. فَإِيَّكُ فِي أُمَّتِي أَحَدٌ فَإِنَّهُ عُمَرٌ. If anybody is like that, then it would be Umar. In other words, when we speak about الصالحين, yes, الملائكة. So, do الملائكة give actually wahi? Do they give wahi? Just like we had seen, الملائكة can give that wahi, just like it gave Maryam, just like it gave Musa, just like it gave al-Hawariyin, because at the end, as long as we're connecting ourselves with salah, with piety, you will see that yes, even in malaika will give. You need to. All right, let's continue. غروراً is basically, of course, الغرور and الغرور. What's the difference between الغرور and الغرور? What's the difference between the two? Now, when you look at al-ghurur, that basically means to bring in manipulation. Il-gharur is basically the manipulation itself. Il-ghurur All right. So it's when you speak about whatever that deceives. So فلا تغرنكم الحياة الدنيا ولا يغرنكم بالله الغرور. All right. And then you would have الغرور ولا يغرنكم بالله الغرور. There is القراءة الغرور and الغرور. Okay. So the difference is الغرور is the actual manipulation. الغرور is basically the person that was affected by shaitan, and they would basically start manipulating. Okay, so let's see right there. يوحي بعضهم إلى بعض. That means that they would support one another in manipulation to basically bring about the wrong, deceiving thoughts. Remember, if a person is having a wrong reading to something, they're going to have a wrong interpretation to it. So just because the society may describe that a person that has 25 million followers, that person is an influencer, a mu'min sees that as influenced only the shayateen like them. That this is not going to deceive me as a mu'min to see these people of anything. They can be called influencers. To me, they're nothing but an addition to shayateen, and that they're nothing but approved by shayateen to be big shaitan like them. A shaitan like them, acting on behalf of shayateen. Let's see here. So can a human being actually be a shaitan? Let's see. He said, روي عن ابن عباس بإسناد ضعيف. It was narrated upon Ibn Abbas in a non-authentic hadith that he had said in regards to the ayah, يوحي بعضهم إلى بعض. He said that this is Iblis with each and every single jinni shaitan. So there are shayateen that are from the jinn and shayateen that are from humans. And then the one that is the jinn would speak to the human shayateen, and they would say, I had deceived my companion with such and such. And then your companion, he deceived with such and such. And then that's basically how they would give this inspiration to one another. So there's an evil inspiration and there's a good inspiration. An evil inspiration and a good inspiration. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would let us know that with these inspirations, of course, comes in with these inspirations comes a lot of the effect in how later this will bring about the implication of whether this person is amongst the salihin or whether this person is amongst the fasiqeen. Let's see. وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ لِيُجَادِلُوكُمْ. Shayateen, they would give the inspiration to their awliya. What is al-wali? So there's a wali for al-mu'mineen and there's a wali for al-fasiqeen and al-kuffar. Yes. And what's a wali? A wali is like a leader. It's like an authority. So you would have shaitan, they would have certain awliya. They would have certain followers. And these followers would have other followers, and those followers, they would basically be the awliya for a shaitan. So there would be the big shaitan, and this shaitan would basically inspire the other, let's say, major shayateen, the big shayateen, and then those big shayateen, they would, think of it as different positions. So you would have these big influencers, probably politicians, probably musicians, etc. Those would be big shayateen. And those big shayateen, they would have certain influencers, probably maybe within our city, maybe within our school, maybe within our district, maybe within our classroom. There would be a shaitan. And this is extremely scary. Am I a representative for a shayateen, or am I a representative for al-malaika or al-salihin? That's not every leader is necessarily a leader in good. We would have to question, am I a leader in khayr or am I a leader in shar? Let's see. In al-Qurtubi said, قلت ويدل عليه من صحيح السنة قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. What basically is proven, in other words, what supports what Ibn Abbas had mentioned, even though it's not narrated in an authentic hadith, authentic chain of narration, but he said, the Prophet ﷺ said, ما منكم من أحد إلا وقد وكل به قرينه من الجن. Every single one there of us basically has a certain jinn that is accompanying us, and this jinn would basically be spewing, give certain information and spewing basically to us. You would be sitting down and shaitan, kill yourself, kill your brother. Your mom can't see, go online and do this and this. Or no one's watching, steal something from the store. Or no one's watching, poke someone. Or no one's watching, steal the money, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be stealing, but it can also be harming yourself, harming others, etc. That's basically الشياطين يوحون إلى أوليائهم. They would also give al-wahi for their own followers. In other words, the stronger the following, the more the person is following this shaitan, the more obedient to them, the stronger the shaitan knows that they can have a certain power over that person. It doesn't come with a snap. It just becomes with, let's say, frequent following. That frequent following from one action to another, that makes the person shaitan with the frequency and the determination to insist on following these behaviors and these actions. Let's see. So when the Prophet ﷺ was asked, did you have one too? And he said, yes. He said, wala ana. In other words, me too. Even me, I have a qareen. You've got a shaitan, each and every single one of you. You've got a shaitan. إلا أن الله أعانني عليه فأسلم or فأسلم. Two narrations. فأسلم or فأسلم. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given me the empowerment over him, so I will be protected with the فأسلم, فأسلموا, and فأسلم meaning that فأسلم, that he had become Muslim. Okay, so different both فأسلموا or فأسلم. Okay, let's continue with that one. Another narration, روى عوف بن مالك عن أبي ذر. So this is a narration, Auf ibn Malik narrated upon Abu Dhar, that the Prophet ﷺ had said, يا أبا ذر هل تعوذت بالله من شر شياطين الإنس والجن؟ قال قلت يا رسول الله وهل للإنس من شياطين؟ قال نعم هم شر من شياطين الجن. يرحمكم. What happened? The Prophet ﷺ asks Abu Dhar, did you seek refuge in Allah from the evils of shayateen, the humans and the jinn? Abu Dhar responds, O Prophet of Allah, do the humans actually have shayateen? In other words, are there human shayateen too? And he said, yes. In fact, they're worse than the shayateen of al-jinn. Let's just see right here. This hadith, although mentioned right there, but I want you to look down right here. And he said, في إسناده مبهم. In that chain of narration, there is an ambiguous person in it. And what else? And he said, وفي إسناده مجهول ومتروك. And inside that chain of narration, there is a figure, there's a person that basically was left by the chain of narrations. But Ibn Kathir, he had mentioned that there were many chains of narrations for this hadith, and therefore they would enforce one another. I want to look at this one. Sometimes we may have a hadith that is weak, but just because it was mentioned that it was weak, it doesn't necessarily mean that right away we would just reject it like that, because we may have different chains of narrations that may fortify, that may empower that hadith, and actually give me the inference that the information within it contains some truth, or contains some information that is valid information. Let's see, Malik ibn Dinar, he said, whoa, wait a minute, so who's Malik ibn Dinar anyways? Malik ibn Dinar, maybe we need to learn just a little bit. That's going to be our final thing to learn for today. Let's look at Malik ibn Dinar. Okay, Malik ibn Dinar, maybe we can get to this one. Right there, I'm going to open Malik ibn Dinar. Okay, I want you to see how we're going to search about Malik ibn Dinar. Malik ibn Dinar. Okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. Malik ibn Dinar. And this is where I want to go to. Okay, Malik ibn Dinar. This one, sometimes they would give good articles, but I want you to, just learn how to go to this one. Let's see this one. And let's see. Why did I go to this one? Because this is the library. And guess what? We can actually translate all of this. Let's see. Voila, look, you can even get this translated. Let's see the translation. The knowledge of the righteous scholars is counted in the trustworthiness of the tabi'in, and one of the most prominent scribes of the Quran. And one of the most prominent scribes of the Quran was in his own language. He was born in the day of Ibn Abbas, and he heard from Anas ibn Malik, who came after him, and he narrated from him, and from Al-Ahnaf ibn Qais, Sa'id ibn Jubair, Hassan al-Basri, Muhammad ibn Sirin, and Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad, and several others. I want you to look at this one because, just learning, just being able to know which book to open, you won't get 100% accuracy of translation, but at least you'll get a good 85%, 75% accuracy. It's a great deal. And especially with AI today, it's going to give you a good amount of good translation right there. And you can find these scholars and learn more about them. And plus, by knowing which website to translate and which website and which resources to go to, I want you to see right there, Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, a very important resource to learn about those great scholars, and definitely go and just learn how to figure out those resources in order to translate the right resources. So here we go. Now, like I said, you can actually translate and have a really good translation for those resources. Okay, so now that we recognize who Malik ibn Dinar is, now let's see what he had said. إن شياطين الإنس أشد علي من شيطان الجن وذلك أنني إذا تعوذت بالله ذهب عني شيطان الجن وشيطان الإنس يجيئني فيجرني إلى المعاصي عيانا. يا سلام, scared. What did he say? He said, Shayateen al-ins, the human shayateen, are even more dangerous upon me than the shayateen al-jinn. Why? He said, because if I were to say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, the jinn shayateen would flee right away. But the human shayateen, they would still stay and may drag me to sin. They can convince you, even if you were to say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, they will still sit next to you and say, oh, come on, just try this. Come on, you can take this. Come on, let's just go, man. Why are you so boring? And they will insist and insist. and then they'll drag you into the wrong things right there. Umar ibn al-Khattab. I want you to look at this one. This one's rather ironic. Okay, hold on. Let's see what it says. Umar ibn al-Khattab, he heard a woman say this. And why am I translating this? And why am I saying this? For a reason. Stay tuned to know more. Okay, a woman said, إن النساء رياحين خلقنا لكم وكلكم يشتهي شم الرياحين. What did she say? She said, women are like basil. They were created for you, and you all adore and desire smelling basil. Okay, Umar ibn al-Khattab heard her. He flipped from nisa rayahin, basil, to women are shayateen. خلقنا لنا. Umar ibn al-Khattab responded, women are shayateen. They are shaitans, devils created for us, and we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the sharr shayateen, from the evils of shayateen. Someone might say, well, wait a minute. Umar ibn Khattab just called women shayateen. Isn't that misogyny? A couple of things I would like to comment on this one. Number one is that you could say that here, the scholars that reviewed this, they said, لم نقف على هذا الخبر عن عمر. We don't have any valid resource or any verified evidence that this is a quote or a story that traces back all the way to Umar ibn Khattab. In other words, we don't have credible resources that said that really this is what Umar ibn Khattab had said. But السبكي in طبقات الشافعية, and certainly الثعالبي in ثمار القلوب, basically had mentioned a story of that, but not necessarily the qissa about Umar ibn al-Khattab. Okay, so here it is. Al-Qurtubi was saying it was Umar ibn al-Khattab, but Al-Qurtubi didn't have any, just because Al-Qurtubi mentioned that one, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is true. Okay, so that's number one. Because Al-Qurtubi was actually in the 6th century Hijrah. So for sure, he doesn't have strong enough chain of narration that goes all the way to Umar al-Khattab. We're talking about 600 years. So unless he has a resource to go back to prove that it was on Umar ibn al-Khattab. But number two is that when it doesn't have to be Umar ibn Khattab. Of course, we don't have any evidence that that's what Umar ibn Khattab had said. But when he had, or this person, when they had said, Inna nisa shayateen, why would Al-Qurtubi quote that? Why would Al-Qurtubi didn't want to quote that to say that women are shayateen. He didn't want to quote to say women are shayateen. But he was quoting the idea that just like there can be men shayateen, there could be women shayateen as well. And that humans could also be shayateen because anyways, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna min amwalikum wa awladikum fitna. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said, and some of your azwajikum wa awladikum fitna aduwwan lakum, in another ayah, called them that they're actually enemies to us. That some spouses, some children are basically adu, they're basically enemies to us. It can happen. It can happen. Notice that these ayat, they didn't say your parents can be enemies, but they said your children and your spouses can be enemies. All right, let's continue. So what this is saying is that, yes, some women, this isn't just making it exclusive to women. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ مَا فَعَلُوا. And that's basically to let us know that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had willed that they would not do this, He would have basically not let them do it. So we're at the end right there. And فَذَرْهُمْ. فَذَرْهُمْ means leave them, but this isn't to say leave them to it, meaning I'm allowing them to do this. فَذَرْهُمْ is containing within it a form of threat. It's threatening that if they were to engage and to continue living like this, that this is basically going to be what they will be accountable for. So when you say dhar, that means da. That means there are certain people, you had given them the advice, you had put in your effort to wake them up. Sometimes it's just a matter of time. Let them wake up on their own. But you still have to, let's say, use all the effort and continue whenever possible to remind them of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to remind them of khayr, to remind them of the dangers of sin, etc. You want to work on that always. And certainly that brings us to وَلِتَصْغَى إِلَيْهِ أَفْئِدَةُ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ وَلِيَرْضَوْا وَلِيَقْتَرِفُوا مَا هُمْ مُقْتَرِفُونَ. I would hate to stop here, but well, inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, inshallah. No one wants to be live? That's okay. We'll turn off the live, and inshallah, we'll see, I forgot how you turn off the live sometimes. Let's see. Okay, there we go.